Again, our favorite quote for the month is by Michael Garvey. He says, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." Then the people that have history that they don't, that is somehow distorted, that's even worse. Tonight, our guest is Dr. Sam Ngovo. He's a lecturer at Morgan State University. Dr. Ngovo, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. This is part 3 of our series on the history of Liberia. We have discussed the early periods, that is in the 14th to 15th century. We also discussed the latest, the second waves of migration. That's up to the 19th century when the settlers arrived. Tonight, we will begin from the early republic when Liberia first got its independence up to the early 1920s. That's the period that really shaped Liberia. And so we have invited Dr. Samuel Ngovo to talk to us, to walk us through this period. Dr. Ngovo, we are so happy that you are here.
Thank you for the second time inviting me. And I remember some time ago you invited me, and that we were talking about the Bani people, and this trip around is a national history. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Right, and so we are happy to get you. School is in session, marking student papers and doing all that, but we're glad to have you.
Yeah, I have a lot of papers right now, to grade, but let's get this over with, and I'll do that later.
All right. Dr. Samuel B. Ngovo, his expertise is in history, that's African and African-American history. He's a lecturer at Morgan State University, that's in Baltimore, Maryland. For his education, he got his BA in history from Cotton University, that's in 1989. His master's in history from Binghamton University, that's the State University of New York, in 2003. And he also got a PhD in history from Western Michigan University in 2011. His dissertation in his PhD program was on the history of the Bandi ethnic group. He also discussed its relationship with the government of Liberia and the activities of the Episcopal Church, and also the spread of Islam. Dr. Ngovo has 2 siblings. One is deceased as a result of the Liberian Civil War. Both of his parents are deceased. But Dr. Ngovo, once again, we are glad to have you discussing the history of Liberia.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we want to welcome all our people, all our listeners from across the globe watching us tonight on Focus on Liberia. This is part 3, and we want all of you to take part in this piece of history. On behalf of my co-host, Danielle Knuckles Gouchard, who is now with us tonight, and also my guest relations manager, Stephanie Setro, we say welcome and thanks so much for joining us. Let's start, Dr. Ngovo, by giving us a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today.
Well, you talk about early republic, 1847 when Liberia got its independence, and up to 1920, those were challenging years. The young republic, fighting hard to survive. The new leadership, you had to use all skills, diplomatic skills, and all negotiation, and the like, to make the country, stand on a strong footing, and so it's actually a challenging year in Liberian history, as a country, independent country, very young and very fragile, and they tried to put resources together, not having a strong economy, so all these things, put challenges to the new leaders, even up to 1920, the country, was very much challenged by both national and international issues.
Thank you. So let's go back before the Declaration of Independence on July 26, 1847. What were some of the circumstances leading to that declaration? If you can, let's take a back step and walk us through just a period before the Declaration of Independence. What was the situation like?
Well, before independence, the settlers were all scattered on the coast of the Atlantic. You have Monterrey, and you have Sino, you have Asako, and then you have Maryland, they were all scattered. They had limit to various territorial limit, that was effectively under the control of each settlement. But you also have various ethnic groups, who were in between these settlements, and often there were problems, with these ethnic groups, either the Grebels or the Crew, and the people in Maryland have problems with the Crew, with the Grebel people, and the Sino, with the Crew people. And so, and you had these European traders, slave trade had been abolished, but you still had European traders who were trading in non-slave and sometimes involved slave, in like talking about palm oil, talking about cane wood and pepper and other, non-slave material, but they were violating, Liberian clean area, actually coastal water and port of entry. So they could not pay taxes because they didn't consider Liberian colony to have authority in this area. So the colonists found it difficult to even, raise revenue, because they had not been recognized as, a sovereign entity, and so all these things contributed to the need to be able to, come together, Sino, they call Mississippi in Africa, Asako, that were established by Pennsylvania and New York society combined, and most right to come together, and form a Commonwealth, and but the Commonwealth is, also did not have effective authority. In fact, it was not recognized as an independent state, and so all these factors contributed, eventually to the need to be able to have some legal status, international legal status, so, and came up with this, Declaration of Independence, and of course, that was a major reason to try to have legal status so that we'll be able to effectively control their territory and their coastal line.
Thank you. Speaker before you, Dr. Herbert Brewer, he stressed so much that it's not good to read history backwards. So looking back, sometimes it's very easy to say, well, why we needed to declare independence and who were we declaring independence from at that time? So it's a good that we take a step back and put ourselves in the position of the people at that time. What was their thought process? What were the things that they were thinking? So for declaring independence, did they meet any obstacle? What were some of the challenges or resistance that they met along the way before that was finally realized?
Well, you mean before declaring independence?
Yeah, if they have some bottlenecks and some challenges or some resistance.
Well, the resistance was only in terms of, as I said, traders along the coastal area who did not want to, who were in fact inciting, the Crew, the Grebel in the coastal area, and other people, not to recognize sovereignty, or any kind of, authority of the colony, and so it was a major obstacle. It was a major challenge, for the colony before independence and even after independence, and so these were challenges. And besides that, ACS, that was actually, in charge or took care of the colony until the last governor, Thomas Buchanan, left and the J.J. Robert took over. ACS was losing, influence in America, and they were no longer getting the funding they wanted, and in fact, because in America, abolitionist movement was getting stronger and stronger, they become louder, so they were no longer, supporting, money and giving money to the cost of ACS, as ACS were often, accused of not being really, sympathetic to the black cause, but rather, they were dominated by slaveholders, and white people. Most of the governors of the earlier colony of Liberia were all white people, until, J.J. Robert took over. They all were white. So a lot of black people and some white people thought ACS were not actually, it was a pretense, that they were fighting for black people, but rather, they were actually fighting the cause of white people. So money was no longer coming in. So when, the New York settlement declared independence, I mean, that was just to a relief of the ACS, organization. So that was a major challenge locally, the traders that were violating their territorial and coastal rights, and also, no money coming in. So they also wanted to make sure that, they could get independent and then be able to establish, some control over their territory and collect revenue, to support the young country.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Our guest tonight is Dr. Samuel Ngovo. He's a lecturer at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And our topic tonight is the history of Liberia, the early republic, that is the period from 1847 to 1920, or the early 1920s. This is part 3 in our series. We have the first guest spoke about the history of Liberia, that's the early settlements. And then we went, the second part was the second waves of migration. Those two were done by Dr. Herbert Brewer. Tonight, we are discussing the earliest republic, and our guest is Dr. Samuel Ngovo. Dr. Ngovo, when Liberia declared her independence in 1847, America did not recognize Liberia until a year later. Why was that, and what were some of the impact?
Well, in fact, it was not a year later. The first country, when Liberia declared independence in 1847, the first country to recognize Liberia was Great Britain, 1848, and followed by France, 1852. And it took almost 10 years, after France, 1862, before United States recognized Liberia independent. So it was a long time. It was not 1 year. It was, a long time before even. So and now, the irony there is that, countries that have been very much threat to Liberia's survival, were the first to recognize Liberia independent. A United States that actually helped to give birth to Liberia, did not recognize Liberia independence, until, when the Civil War broke out. And the reason why that was the case was because the feeling against, slavery, the feeling about slavery in America was still very high, And remember when Liberia declared independence, 1847, 3 years later, about 1850, they passed the Fugitive Act in the United States. Fugitive Act was intended, to grab Black people who were running away from slavery. Slave owners from the South would send people to the North to go look for their slaves and take them back to slavery. So the feeling about slavery was still very high. And in fact, those who were the leaders, including Abraham Lincoln, who was the president, even though Lincoln, per se, did not actually have his own, slaves, per se, but he also had he was a racist. And he was also, against the idea of Black people being given, political power equal to white. And, so you couldn't have that kind of high feeling about slavery in America, and the American government go ahead to recognize a Black country, where we have to accept a Black ambassador in Washington, D.C. So you couldn't have Black people as slaves, and you have Black people as ambassadors, or Black person as ambassadors.
I know that could cause problem for the young republic.
Of course, it caused problem. It caused problem because, and that's why right after Declaration of Independence, where Rabon went first, Rabon visited England, all right? He visited England to seek the English support because, remember, Great Britain was in charge of Sierra Leone, and the French were in charge of Guinea, now called Guinea, and then Ivory Coast, You know, so you had the European countries around Liberia, but the British traders were very much prominent on the coastal area of Liberia. They were violating Liberia territorial rights, you know, and they refused to pay, you know, any kind of tax, you know, for their trading activity, and they were inciting coastal people, you know, like the crew and the Grebo against the Liberian government. So Rabo had to make it his business to visit England to seek the English support, you know, and Great Britain also, you know, wanted a legal entity to be able to, you know, be a backbone of Great Britain in fighting against slavery, because Britain thought that having or recognizing Liberia independent, Liberia would be a good partner in trying to stamp out slavery on the coast of West Africa. You know, because remember, you know, Liberian leadership, both as a colony and independent, they were fighting slavery. They were fighting anywhere they see slave activity going on, you know, they would try to stop it. And that was a very good point, you know. So United States also, you know, during the war 1861, 1862, when the United States recognized Liberia independent, they wanted Liberia to take strong action against any European slave trader or anybody that involved in that activity, you know, on the coast of West Africa. You know, so it was a major challenge for the young republic, you know, and also international issue, like United States had to focus more on, you know, its own internal affairs, you know, the Civil War, you know, so during that time, you know, attention on Liberia, you know, was a little relaxed, you know, so that posed a lot of challenge, you know, to Liberia survival.
Good. And you mentioned twice now that the fight along the coast with the crew and the Grebo, not there were skirmishes, and so you said the British were inciting them.
British traders, not the British government, but the British traders.
Traders. What was the trade like? Because as I learned, in the area of Sinoko, I think Nana Crew or Seta Crew, they almost had like a seaport or natural harbor. So these people were already trading with the British even before the coming of the settlers.
Well, there were trading activity going on in the coastal area, and that's why they didn't want it to stop, because remember, these people were not, the crew and the Grebo were not monolithic group. You know, there were different crew and different Grebo, you know, settlement, you know, settlers around the coastal area. And they have been involved with the trade with, you know, Europeans even before the settlers arrived. And so doing, they did not want any of the activity to be disrupted as a result of the presence of the settlers.
That's fair. Let's go to the early republic. I know Joseph Jenkins Roberts was elected as the first president. Let's talk about the issues leading, or let's talk about that election. What was it like? Was it a regular election? Was it like selection? And what were some of the issues being discussed? And how was this guy picked to become the first president?
Well, the election, they made the Constitutional Convention, you know, 1847, and you know, they have at that time it was divided. The settlers were divided. You had the light-skinned people, you had the dark-skinned people. All right, and but the settlers, you know, actually there were two political parties initially. You know, one they called the Pro Administration Party, which were on the side of Joseph J.P. Robert, and then you had the Anti-Administration Party that was led by Samuel Benedict. All right, and the hard issue, the issue was about, you know, the term of office. The Pro-Administration Party, you know, was advocating 2 terms, you know, for the presidency, and the Anti-Administration Party will say you could go 2 terms. You know, the Pro-Administration Party, the Anti-Administration Party of Samuel Benedict, you know, which took the name the Old Wheat Party, the Old Wheat Party. You know, what Joseph King on was what the True Liberian Party. You know, the True Liberian Party later on took the name Republican Party, and then the Old Wheat Party later on became the Two Wheat Party. But initially, you know, that was a contention. The Anti-Administration Party wanted 10 years, one-time presidency. All right. Whereas the Pro-Administration Party, the True Liberian Party, they wanted 2 years term. That means you can go 2 years, and after that 2 years. And so eventually what happened was, the pro-administration party, won the election. And so Joseph J.G. Robert, became the new leader. But what happened was that right after the election, and of course it still happening in Liberia today, and it has been part of Liberian politics called recurring, events in Liberia. Whenever a party wins, the Victoria Party also try to bring in, the opposition. After Robert won the election, he brought in Samuel Benedict as a Chief Justice, and so eventually that means that the Whig Party, became very weak. All right. And then in the new legislature, you have a lot of, the pro-administration party people who were in the Congress or the legislature. All right. So that put, the light-skinned people, Joseph J.G. Robert, in a strong position.
Oh, wow. So now, when after Liberia gained independence, what was the relationship like now with the ACS, the American Colonization Society? Did they just see what happened?
Yeah, as I said earlier, after independence, the relationship, in fact, it was a great relief for ACS for Liberia to declare its independence, because, as I said, funding was now coming forth. ACS was no longer generating money, in America as it did before, initially. So the Declaration of Independence, ACS have very, very limited influence in Liberia, and their influence actually, began to decline in Liberia, because they no longer have money to be actively involved, but somehow, some relationship, continue, but it will not no longer about like they had before independence. ACS influence declined greatly in the colony, in the young country.
So let's talk about the natives in these elections. What was their participation, if any?
Remember, the natives were not considered citizens.
Okay.
So they could not even allow them to vote, and that continued until when the natives were allowed to vote about during my time, 1947. Before natives were allowed to vote, even though 1907, they extended citizenship to them, through Arthur Barclay. But until 1947, before natives were allowed to vote. So they were not allowed to vote, even though they were within the boundary of the young republic. But voting, they were not permitted. They were not given the right to vote.
Okay. Well, before we move on, we have a question on Facebook about the Declaration of Independence. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? I know our history, says something like that, but tell me about the Declaration. Who wrote it, and how did the language come about? Because specifically those things that were stated, were these things that were they debated, or how the whole process worked?
The Declaration of Independence, was just adopted actually after the American, Declaration of Independence. The only thing is the initial Declaration of Independence, they talk about we the citizens originated from the United States of America, okay, and which of course they were trying to say they were not African, but they were American citizens that migrated here, and live here. The person that wrote, I think it should be Hillary Tisch. I'm not yet, too clear with that, but I can tell you that the Declaration of Independence was actually just a replica of American Declaration of Independence. We the people originated from the United States of America, settled here, and that actually makes them not to be considered as African, but rather American settlers in Africa.
Okay, so Joseph J.G. Robert was the first president for that first term. How long that term lasted, and what were some of his major accomplishments?
Well, major accomplishment of Joseph J.G. Robert was recognition of Liberian independence, by Great Britain first, and then later on by France, you know, and I think Benson became president either 1856, you know, something like that, and that was just before or right. It was after Benson took over a year before Maryland became John Liberia 1857, and then Robert was very influential, you know, after he left office. In fact, he wanted to know that Benson sent to Maryland to go make peace between the Ngovo and the Maryland settlers. And after the crisis in between the Ngovo and the settlement, you know, then Maryland decided to become Liberia, but Robert played a very important role even after he left office.
All right, let's talk about the economy at that time and Liberia relationship with the outside world during those early years.
I think Liberia that time, you know, the economy was just trade. A lot of people were involved in trading activities, you know, along the coastal area. That's how Liberian government was able to, and that's why they wanted native people to start trading with the British and the French traders, you know, because those goods, you know, whether pepper, you know, ivory, or rice, you know, cane wool, you know, and you know, and the like, you know, palm oil, you know, all those things were traded with the British and the French traders. So the Liberian government wanted to make sure that, you know, these commodities would be under their control, you know, and that's why the Kimo were what became known as the port of entrance law. The port of entrance, that means they were able to, point at certain port where trading activity would take place. Like for example, Harper, you know, Sino, Buchanan, you know, and all the way Rabosport, you know, those are areas that they designated as a place only where trading activity would take place because that would be under their control. So trade was a major thing, you know. At that time, you know, earlier republic, I mean, Liberia never had manufacturing thing, you know, foreign investment coming in, you know, other than, you know, in the 1920s when fire still came. But other than that, trading activities and Liberia survival, you know, through collection of put, you know, fees were a major concern. So trade was a major thing that was going on, you know, even, you know, a man like E.J. Raw, he was a, you know, very good trader, you know, I mean, he had business before even he became president. And also trading activity was a major thing that was, you know, Liberia was involved with along the coastal area. And in terms of international issue, Liberia was more concerned about, you know, people to recognize its independence, you know, and to have some sort of, you know, diplomatic relations, you know, to be able to recognize them as independent countries. So that was the major thing that was on the mind of the earlier leaders.
And I know at that time, also during the early years, most of Africa was under colonial power. You know, Africa was colonized.
Colonization, yeah. You know, there were, you know, Africa colonial system actually became effective. They were under trading influence by Europeans. Europeans had established trading area in most part of Africa. But colonization did not become effective until the Berlin Conference. After the Berlin Conference, 1884-85, you know, when they met, you know, in Berlin, Germany, you know, and decided to effectively or politically occupy area that they had already started carrying out trading activity. So, and it was only after, you know, 1884-85 that really colonization took effect because, you know, that's the time European countries began to expand or fight for territory, you know, and make their presence felt in areas that they had already claimed through trade. All right. So, and that was the type of earlier part, you know, they had established trading posts or trading activity around Africa, but they were not still fighting for territory. It was just a commercial influence they had greatly, you know, in most part of Africa.
And what was Liberia's relationship with them, with those trading partners in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The individual, you know, who were trading with, people around Liberia were often not obeying Liberian laws, and of course the French and the British were often ready to protect their citizens. In fact, there were problems, with Liberian government. All right, they were always ready, and that's why when Liberia declared her independence, we said rather had to go to England to make sure that happened, so that British citizens would be the British government will put check on their citizens. Likewise, the French, But even after independence, it continued, but the British later on realized that, they rather want to deal with a country, with some legal status to continue protecting their individual citizens who are violating the rules of other people.
You're right. There's a question on Facebook from Larry Davis. Say, how was Liberia able to maintain her independence during and after the Berlin Conference?
After the Berlin Conference, Liberia faced major challenges, both from the British and the French. We talk about the boundaries, all right? And, Liberia had to take steps to make sure that, area where they have had some contact with, local people or indigenous people, they have to make their presence felt there. So the expansion of Liberia into the hinterland was a major move by government. And starting with, James Springfield and later on Coleman, and they begin to have some contact with, chiefs that were located outside the perimeter of Monrovia, outside the coastal area. But the person that was really very much involved, that took, I can say, that make it, effective, move was after Barclay, when he became president in 1904. He decided to, move into the interior. In fact, all the area that Liberia had claimed, he extended citizenship to them by 1907. He said, you are a citizen. Before then, Liberia had sent explorers into the interior. You remember Benjamin J.K. Anderson, right, and other people had made trips, as far as into the interior. All right. But after the Berlin Conference, a lot of things were going on outside and inside Africa. All right. And for example, after the Berlin Conference, the French, saw that there was this guy, Samuel Ture. Mm-hmm. Samuel Ture had built an empire through slave trade and other, in the Puttajaran area. And the French wanted to get rid of him. All right. But every time, they mount our attack, his forces will move further down into the Liberian territory. The French saw this as a danger. So they warned the Liberian government that if you are not able to monitor area that you claim, we are going to take over. All right. And in fact, it was true that, that the French were able to take a lot of territory from Liberia. All right. 1892, they took a territory between Kavala and San Pedro. That land was for Liberia, the French took, because, Liberian government were not able to make its president effective. The British, after 1883, they took over territory, in Cape Mount area, and divided the Va people. Some Va people stayed this side, and the other Va people live in Sierra Leone. That they call them, the Konon. The Konon people are related to the Va. All right. And also in Guinea, they took Liberia land. If you look at the map of Liberia, you will see that area, of Guinea that come very close to Ganta. All those areas, were part of Liberia. But Liberia lost their territory. And all because the Berlin Conference had given them authority to effectively occupy area that they claim. And Liberian government did not have the resources, did not have the manpower, to be able to effectively make its presence felt in this area.
And the impact of that, because when you talk about the San Pedro area, I'm thinking, that San Pedro area across the Kavala, because you have the Ngovo people on both sides, If you go to Yokepa, you see the Mano people on both sides, all the way to Ganta, JK area, the Mano people. If you go to the Masanta area, you see the Loma people on both sides, the Kisi, and all along Liberia's border. So you're saying those were the areas that were taken because Liberia government did not effectively have a presence in those areas.
Of course, Liberia government was not able to effectively make its presence felt in those areas that she claimed. And because Liberia government did not have the resources, they did not have the manpower, all right? And so these European countries took over the territory, and of course, Liberia complained, and even asked the U.S. for assistance. And the only thing U.S. government came out to say, was to tell Britain and France, even though they are not directly responsible for Liberia, like colonists, but American people will not take it lightly if the two countries were to jeopardize, the existence of Liberia as an independent country.
Wow, that's interesting. So I know we discussed the ethnic groups and how they came to Liberia. Most of them, almost all of them. There are questions on, some people maybe they didn't watch our previous show. They were talking about which of the ethnic groups were present, but all of them were present. But let's discuss now how those groups or the demographic of Liberia. I know Liberia, the natives became part of Liberia, later on, or part of what is called Liberia, little by little. But walk me through the demographics, how these areas grew and how people became part of them over the years during this early period.
I'm not sure I got that question right.
Right, I'm talking about like the ethnic groups. All these ethnic groups, they came and they settled in places that we know as Liberia today. But citizenship, for instance, was not extended to them. So how did the Liberian population, ethnic group-wise and country-wise, change over the years during this early republic?
Well, what we know, I think you have somebody that discussed that the migration. Migration
Right.
was done. It was not done overnight. It was done in waves of migration, and and often people will say, well, those who live in the coastal area probably were ahead of those who live in the interior. That means that they came ahead, and that's why they are called in the coastal area, because the Bassa, the Kru, the Ngovo that live around the coastal area, they didn't come across the ocean. They came from interior Africa, so they are ahead. They are living in the coastal area. But those that are behind, the Lorman, the Pele, the Bani, all those people later on came as a second wave of migration. All right, and that the settlement of these people, actually was done based on affiliation, and the Liberian government, did not have any saying to say, look, let Kru people live here, let Ngovo people live here, let Bassa people live here. The Liberian government had any say in that. They had no control over that. But initially, those coastal people or ethnic groups that were in the coastal area, they were not extended citizenship, even though Liberian government interacted with them and often tried to continue the process what became assimilation, and bring them into their home to work, and then it gradually, began to change them, extend what became as a civilized life, so the Liberian government, in fact, was carrying on what, the Europeans were carrying on in their own territory, civilizing mission, try to civilize the native people, and at a certain point in time, you can absorb them, into the system, So that what was going on, and that had a relationship built, through assimilation, through apprenticeship, and the like. So, but to say where they live presently, the Liberian government had no decision in that to say the Gola people live here or the Bassa people live here. They had. In fact, when they came, people were already in their various locations.
Right. So now, citizen. Anyway, let me go down to our questions. This one from Mansin Logan, talking about the first constitution. Who wrote it? And somebody else asked who inserted that Negro clause and why was that important?
The Constitution, the first one by Samuel Greenleaf, of course, 1847 Constitution. And the first Constitution talk about, they said, the people of color. That's the word they use. People of color, that, citizenship was extended only to people of color. But that in 1907 created a problem, because people of color, that means people who were not Caucasian, but they were people of color. So it means that Lebanese, Indians, people in North Africa could easily become Liberian citizens. All right? And so 1907, they changed the people of color to what? People of Negro descent. All right? So that means that citizenship now was limited to what? Black people.
I wonder they could do DNA testing. What that time, what if a white person come and say I have Negro descent? I wonder how they were going to know. How was such?
Yeah, you have to be black person, so that your children, or you can be qualified to become Liberian citizen. You have to be black.
That be physically black, not DNA black.
Negro. Why you are saying a Negro, black people are Negro.
Right.
If you are white, you are Caucasian.
You don't know they are black until you do their DNA.
Other than Europeans, all the other people, Chinese, Japanese, Arabs, all of them, are called color people. So you are extended citizenship to all of them if you did put a Negro.
Let's talk about other sectors of the society: health, agriculture, art and music, and sports, and all those different things. How did they develop over time during the early republic, or was there any or intentional effort to say encourage or suppress those things?
Well, initially, indigenous, traditional or indigenous, culture or art were not so much, value. And if you want to give credit to any president, Liberian president, who really put in more to make sure that the culture are well valued and taken into consideration, was Thurman. And that came about through his unification policy. When he took office, 44, which we are ahead, we are not really that far in our discussion, but right. Thurman was the one that really build a strong foundation to incorporate, native culture into a Liberian culture, even though, we don't have it yet to the level, that need to be. And because if we talk about Liberian national identity, Liberian culture, should be reflected into it. And but we don't have that yet. And that's why, other than the Liberian English that we all speak, there's nothing that we all relate to as we call Liberian national identity. Even though Liberia is the mosaic country, very culture, very different tradition or so, but we don't have anything that can still unite us as a people. There's nothing we can point at, that unite us. And in fact, every symbol we have in Liberia is more divisive, than unified.
What's about agriculture, health, education, our school system? How did these things, because everything is gradual from the beginning to the early 1920s. How were things like?
Well, schools, schools were, first of all, the initial move to, build schools, was sometimes undertaken by missionaries. Like Cape Mount, the Episcopal missionaries, where I come from, Lofa, I come from, Bolahon, 1922, the Episcopal people established, a school there, and they also established school in Cape Mount. So it was initially by missionary before government, came in to, start building school, but government did not have funding to be able to, put a school in various areas. So missionaries often establish this school. In Zozo, you have the Lutheran people, were highly involved in the school activity. In Bon County, likewise Nimba, you had the Methodist people were involved, and so missionaries were involved. So the government, to really put in fact, it was only very late, when USAID, got involved with government of Liberia and they begin to follow, public school in rural area, but Monrovia was the heart of it, when Liberian College was established, and of course, most of the presidents of Liberia, went through the war of that university, later on became a university, and they became president, so Monrovia was a major hub of education, in Liberia, during, the early 1800, middle part 1800, and all the way now, to 1920s, when schools, were all being established, in some rural area. But Monrovia was the first, and of course, missionaries were highly involved in carrying, education to rural area. Even though the Liberian government, consider it as a very good venture, but sometimes they were suspicious of the missionary, enlightening the minds of the natives who later on tried to challenge government, in Monrovia.
What's the evidence, or were there some instances like that?
Oh yeah, the case of the Grable, in Maryland. When the settlers and the Grable had problems, of course, the Episcopal missionary that had established school there, a lot of Grable, who acquired or went to school in the mission school, began to advocate for their right over the land that, traditionally land not supposed to be bought, but rather transferred, it was inherited. So the educated Grable, began to advocate, for their right or entitlement to have equal right, like the settlers, and that continued, to pose threat to the settlers, and it also culminated to the Grables, who were often divided, and the settlers play one group against the other in order to survive. But by 1870 up to 1875, the Grable educated one had united their people, to declare war on the settlement, and it was led by educated Grable, and there was suspicion that the missionary helped some of the Grable educated to have access to arms. The Liberian government accused the missionary, of some, the settler accused the missionaries of taking side of the Grable. Even in my own area in Western Liberia, the missionary that established the school, a lot of people that went there to school, and sometimes they didn't take up arms, but they begin to question, the activity of government, like some of the activity, like recruiting people to go work on to finance to, or sending it to a government farm, or sometimes making it to pay taxes, hot tax, food tax, it was educated people from mission schools who were advocating against this activity.
So these Southeastern people started giving government hard time a long time.
Yeah. The crew and the Grables, they have been very much in the tongue, in the flesh, under the skin of the Liberian government for years.
Examples from the early time.
Yeah, but you can see, 1840, 1850, the crew had problem with the settlers, and that pushed the Maryland settlement to join Liberia. And the crew people, also, 1855, they have problem with Liberian government. In fact, sometimes, they fought the Liberian government and defeated the settlers. Every now U.S. had to send their through a Liberian request, send a warship to threaten the native people. That if you don't, listen to negotiation, we will destroy your villages, and then they will pull back. And that happened so many times. And up to even 1915, the crew people, were in the flesh of the Liberian government, and not only because they wanted some level of, control over their own lives and their own trading activities, but also the land. All right, the land that the settlers had taken it to be their own. So that was a major problem.
And we'll come to discuss more ethnic and settlers rivalry and also inter-ethnic issues. But there's a question here from Kevin Soko. He said, what was the relationship between Bopulu Kingdom and the new settlement, Bopulu?
Bopulu?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean during the time of South Boso?
I don't know. Calvin said, what was the relationship between the Bopulu Kingdom and the new settlement? Let's stay with our topic of the early republic.
Well, Bopulu, South Boso, which a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but South Boso initially was a slave trader.
Okay.
With the Europeans. And the only people that challenged, or the only person that challenged the leadership, which of course he was able to overcome was Zuma, Gola chief, and because his territory, extended all the way to the coastal area and cut, South Boso leadership off from the coast. All right, but the trick, of course, South Boso May was the, when the settlers arrived, and of course, South Boso presided over conglomeration of ethnic groups. That was not one ethnic group. They had different ethnic groups, that he became leader of. He was a trader, and brought different ethnic groups, and then they make they call confederation. All right, and the smart thing he did was that he developed a relationship with, with the settlers. All right, commercial relationship with the settlers. All right, so where Zuma, in the coastal area was challenging the settlers, he was developing relationship with the settlers. And in fact, whenever they have problem with local people or coastal people, they will send for South Boso. All right. And he will come there, with all his entourage, and force and threaten, native coastal chief, that unless, they respect the settlers, then he will join the settlers to wage war on them. So that was, how he developed that relationship. And so the settler would never look at South Boso as an enemy. They always consider it to be the ally.
And so South Boso was in Bopulu, as you are saying.
There he lived, yeah. There he lived. There where he established. That was the headquarters of his trading activity.
Okay. So it's like, okay, since you want to fight me, I'm going to join the settlers and we will beat you.
Of course. Yeah, and you remember, I think in way back in history, it might sound funny, but actually, when the settlers said for him, one of their problem with the local people, and he came, and told them, and said, look, if you don't respect the settlers, I will make my men available to the settlers so we can wage war on you people.
Right. And that famous letter or what? Haven't sold your country and accepted payment.
Yeah.
You must take the consequences and let the settlers have their land immediately. The language does not sound Kimboso, but
South Boso, whosoever is not certified, let me so. Because if it cause any further disturbance that will make me come to the coast, I will cut your hair off as I did to the old King George.
Right. So it looked, that was not his language, but actually that was him talking, because those were the kind of things he was doing.
He threatened to wage war on them, unless they allow the settlers, to have land that they have acquired. And so that makes him to have good rapport with the settlers.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing Liberian history, specifically the early republic ranging from 1847 to the early 1920s. Our guest is Dr. Samuel Ngovo, the man who has his bachelor, his master, his PhD in history, starting from Cotonou University to right now he's a lecturer at Morgan State University. Dr. Ngovo, let's talk about the early rebellion. You made mention of the Crew and the Ngovo against the Liberian government or against the settlers. Let's dig a little more into that, a little more details on those rebellions and if there were any other besides those two.
Oh yeah, when the Liberian government began to extend authority into the interior, of course they made resistance. They were resisting, among the Gola, and resisting among the Bani, the resisting among the Dan or the Nimba. So as the Liberian government began to extend its authority into the interior, they were resisting. And that was because in 1908, when, of course, the Liberian Frontier Force was created, the Liberian Frontier Force became enforcer of government policy, and because of its heavy-handedness and ruthlessness against native people often resisted. Liberian government had looked for other ways, to generate revenue. And wheresoever they extended authority, they tried to impose, tax on the people. All right. And they have what they call the hair tax and the food tax. They have hot tax and then they have hair tax. Individual have to pay tax and then you have to pay tax on your house. All right. And our people were not used to that. So they have to use the Liberian Frontier Force to enforce tax collection. All right. Among the Gola people, it was more about, land rather than tax. And also because the expansion of Liberian government also desecrated Gola territory. The Gola are one of the major Zo tribe in Liberia. So ethnic group in Liberia, ethnic group in Liberia, one of the major groups that that really believe in their traditional, society. All right. And so when the Liberian government began to extend, during the time of Coma, began to leave the coastal area to go western Liberia as far as go deep into Gola territory, the Gola people saw that they have been robbed of their secret site and other areas. So they took up arms against the Liberian government, and they in fact rally people. They asked Bani people to join them, and they call them or appeal to them in the name of the Poro Society that all ethnic groups that are members of the Poro should join the Gola to fight the Liberian government. Okay? And then when you go further, you go to Bani land, the Bani people also resisted the Liberian government, even though their resistance was not as open, like what happened in Gola territory. All right? And the Bani people, their resistance came about in addition to tax, but also about leadership. In 1907, the Liberian government established presence on the Bani land. Okay? And they tried by all means to have one person that they will be able to relate to. Because why in Bani land, you had chiefs, but you didn't have primary chiefs. All right? So, but then the Liberian government could not deal with all the chiefs at the same time. So they wanted somebody to be their ears and eyes in Bani land. They appointed someone who was not popular with the people. All right? And so because Liberian Frontier Force wanted to make sure to enforce or to force the poison on the Bani people resisted. All right? So that also go all the way, to Nimba. All right? Liberian government had to send soldiers to Nimba to go pacify, they call it pacification. among the mountain of Gio about tax and enforcement of government laws, on the people. Okay, so all these things were involved, and then, later on in the coming to the 1929, when this, recruitment of people to go work from public farm, and sometimes they force people to take them out and send them to Fernando Po to go work, and they pay them money, pay the leadership money, and people saw their children getting missing, and so that also make people to take up, sometimes they take up arms, and sometimes, they use their traditional method, of disobedience.
And in all these rebellion or these skirmishes, I believe Liberians die.
Oh yeah. On the Crew Coast, one attack, against the Liberian, I think the last attack between the Crew and the Liberian government lost almost 30 men. So U.S. had to send their warship, and threaten the Crew people.
So a lot of people die, but one thing that I know we are kind of jumping the gun is that most of the time, Liberians mark hostilities or the killing of Liberians from 1980 as if before 1980 no other Liberian died.
Say that again. I don't think I got that clear.
So I said most of the time when we are discussing Liberian history, we look at 1980 like the beginning where Liberians were killed, say like or 1979, 1980, then the war. But you are saying there were other casualties before this time.
Oh yeah, I mean, when Liberia was established, how Liberia was established at gunpoint. You know that? You remember the story about Robert Stoughton, taking his pistol and want to shoot the chief because he failed to, put his signature on the paper, and that's how, the land was secure for the French settlers, and that has continued. There have always been violence in Liberia, and people often die. So it's not about 1980. It has started all along, and land has often been in the coastal area, trade, the right to trade. Crew people were not used to people being controlling them to tell them who to trade with, who not to trade with. Likewise, the Grebo, even though among themselves they used to fight, but they begin to have common enemy against the settlers. And so every time there was a fight, people died. But those are things that, when you talk about writing the history of Liberia, those are things that should be written in Liberian history book, so people will know, And so our history should not be just from 1822, or maybe about the settlers, but it should include the role played by native people, especially some who contributed greatly to making Liberia what it is today. But we don't have that in Liberian history book. In fact, there is no history book, that includes native people, so far as I know.
And thank God you and your colleagues are working on one right now.
Well, yeah, it's the historical dictionary. We, every project we have 2013 or to continue, and then Canada will already have a comprehensive history of Liberia. But politics, when they put aside the whole writing of the book, and government could not come up with the funding, even though UNESCO had representative in the meeting and said, well, if government come up with seed money, we'll be able to match it, so you can write a book that all the ethnic groups will see themselves in that textbook, and you'll be teaching it in all Liberian schools. That will help to promote unification, But the government felt that, some people politicize it. They say, oh, the history book may indict people because they will talk about what all happened before the war, and some people will feel indicted, and so they politicize, and so we didn't continue the project.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that was the fight between the settlers and the natives. What were some of the, natives against natives fight, and what was the impact?
Often like the Grebo, you have Grebo the Cape and the Grebo in the interior, right. Because see South Grebo, they used to fight each other because what? Trading right. People in the interior want to bring their goods in the coastal area to sell, and they had to pass through the territory of those that live in the coast. So that also, often led to a fight. Likewise the crew, remember they are not monolithic group, they are different groups.
Right.
Yeah, so they also often used to, have fight over something like that. And,
right.
So,
no,
but
that is true, because I heard stories like that growing up, that the Grebels from the interior used to go to the sea to buy boni, to buy fish and salt with their goods. We take things along the sea coast to sell. And so while passing through there were always some fights. So those people always wanted to trade, so they have to fight back so that they can get to the coast to sell what they wanted to sell, and in exchange get salt and whatever goods that they
yeah,
ship.
because the interior people had to go to the coastal area to get sometimes European goods, and the coastal people wanted that kind of privilege. They didn't want the interior people to challenge them on the coast. So that also resulted into a fight.
And so with the ethnic groups now and the settlers, was there any form of competition or did the settler find any ethnic group easier to work with? And also, was there any competition as to, okay, we're going to do X, Y, Z to get closer to these settlers and be able to gain influence over the rest of the population?
Well, first you talk about the coastal area. The interior, of course, that happened, that happened where, some ethnic group will try to form alliance with government, or usually not ethnic group, but it would be chiefs. Some chiefs, we see that, they could establish some alliance with, government officials, and then in turn, they will be able to get some power. But like in the coastal area, like I was talking about the Grebo of the Cape, where they have Kipama, they allow the settlers to settle. So the settlers consider them their friend or their ally against Grebo that were in the interior. All right. So often when there was a fight, the coastal Grebo, often, side with the settlers against the interior Grebo. All right. That took place. In the interior, of course, I can talk about my own area where, not ethnic group, but individual chief will form a line with government officials, and then they give him authority and begin to use that government giving authority to suppress its own people. So that happened, in many places in the interior.
Okay. Let's talk about slavery during the early period, this early republic. It could be domestic slavery, it could be whatever form that we see today as form of slavery. Let's discuss that, if there were instances of slave trading during the early period of the republic.
Before the settlers came, there was slave activity, even though Liberia, the coastal area of Liberia that used to be called Green Coast before Liberia, they were not well known for, slaving, people recruiting slaves. Liberia, the coastal area, the Green Coast were now famous for that, notorious for that, let me say, but there was slave traders often, patrol that area, the patrol that area, and the chance existed, they will get one or two here and there, all right? So that took place before even the settlers arrived. But then when the settlers arrived, they tried to stamp out, slave trade in the coastal area. Well, area that were at least, within the jurisdiction, their reach. They tried to stamp out, and of course, one of the major slave trading activity at that time, around the Green Coast, an area called Galena, the Galena territory, which later became part of Sierra Leone. There were a lot of slaving activity going on in that area. All right, and Joseph Jenkins Robert, when he became president, one of his major push was, to make that part of Liberia, the Kidman area. All right, and so he made effort. The effort started fresh with Jody Ashmore, but it did not continue. But Joseph Jenkins Robert, through his effort, and that area became, part of Liberia eventually. And so slaving activity was going on in the coastal area before the settlers arrived. even when the settlers arrived, there were some areas, that were not under effective control of the settler in the coastal area. So these people were always, there were some British, slave traders, who often came or traders that came and also want to trade in human beings. So not only get, non-slave commodity, but also, try to solicit to get, to get human beings, So the slave trading activity among the native people before the settler arrived, there were different ways that native people practices that more or less were like slave trade. And that was pawn ship. Pawn ship existed among native people before even the settler arrived. And the pawn ship was in the case that, you owe somebody, you are not able to pay, and you take your son or your daughter or whatsoever to live with that person, to work for them until you pay them back. Then your family come back to you. All right, that system existed, But in the case that you pawn somebody to someone and that person, does not have a good heart, they can mistreat that person.
Right. That's what I was coming to ask to the treatment.
Yeah, they can mistreat that person, and they will treat them more like like a slave than like a family person. You see, and that system existed. All right. In fact, before the settler arrived, some people, if you form your family person and that person stay long with them without you freeing them, if the chance come, people looking for slave to sell, they will sell that person. Yeah, So pawn ship started, and it continued, and then, coming to the 1920s, when that issue took place, talking about recruiting people from Liberia to Fernando Po, those are people that easily people give them out, to recruitment agent.
But another system that existed, or even up to today, is taking your child or your friend to live with somebody else, because people wanted people to get education or do other things. And just like slavery, people with good heart treated those people very kindly like their own, and some people treated them badly. Talk to me about those kind of practices too. Even your own family person living with you, so that they can get education. Right now, when you look back, when you want to read history backward, we may sometimes condemn it, but in other sense, that was the system, that was the culture, and people who take their kids to live with somebody else, the intentions were good.
Well, yeah, that was a case. Often people, sometimes chiefs, and sometimes, it will be just a rich person or person that maybe was well famous in the interior, will give their son to maybe want settlers to live with them and go to school, and they take their names, and that was a system of sometimes you call it assimilation process, try to bring them into your wing, to change them and make them look like you, acquire knowledge like you, and so system like that, but also sometimes they recruited people to come live with them and be like house servants, to serve them in the home. Some of them, even went to school, but some did not go to school. They just live there, and do small things for them in the home. Either wash their clothes, clean their house, clean their yard, and those things. And sometimes the only pay was maybe, they feed them and buy their clothes to wear, and that was often the case. And even when school opened in the hinterland, and sometimes government officials used to tell people to send their children to school, and sometimes some people don't want their children to leave to go to school. And doing my research, I came across a document, about a missionary in my area, when they established the school in Bolahon, and they used to go from village to village to tell people to send their children to school, and what do we do? The chief supposed to put his people together, and they decide who to send to school. And what we do is, send the children were very useful in doing farm work. Whenever they put them together, they gather, to get people to go to school. The chief will tell the poor people to send their children, and his own children, he hide them.
Or send the lazy children to school and give the strong ones.
Yeah, eventually, those who are highly educated became the little people children. The chief children didn't get education. You see? A lot of them did get education, only very few. But most of them, were native children, that acquired because they didn't want to send them,
Right.
Say your son going to the mission, why? And sometimes they rub chalk on their son and say he's sick, not because they don't want to send it to the mission. You see? And but usually, we saw that a lot, like a lot of people gave their children into settler home, to go to school. And a lot of them adopted, the names. They were native people, but they adopted settlers' name, Western name.
Right.
Yeah.
This question always come up in the discussion of Liberian history or about Liberia, especially when during the political season, people look at Nigeria and other countries and ask about colonization. Aloysius Benjamin is asking, would it have been beneficial for Liberia to have been colonized than founded by the ACS in terms of development? What is your take? People say, okay, our country is poor. Was it going to be better if somebody else had colonized us? What do you think? Aloysius Benjamin, that's his question.
Well, that also begs the question, as which country you have preferred to colonize Liberia. If that had been the French, maybe, because the French policy was different from the British. The French consider their African colony to be part of France. And so they tried by all means to develop all the African countries that they developed Paris. And that's why you can see most of the French countries are well developed, French colonies, only very few, like Guinea. Because Guinea did not have a good party relation with France. Sekou Touré, basically, he insulted the French. The French insulted, so they left Guinea. But even that, they were able to establish a road network, in Guinea. All right, and you can see how Ivory Coast is, Abidjan, well built, Dakar is well built. But when it comes to the English, the English were more concerned about resources, resources. And even though they have Commonwealth of British West Africa, but, they were not so much concerned about, development. All right. If you see the English build train track, because they want to have access to resources. That's why they build a train track. If you see, Sierra Leone, there was a train track there, a train. And if you see Nigeria or Zambia or whatsoever, and even the little country like Gambia, the British, established themselves in the Gambia because Gambia River was very much important for their access into the interior of Africa. And so they couldn't afford to lose Gambia. In fact, the French wanted to take away Gambia. So it depends which country, you will prefer to colonize you. And perhaps maybe if the settlers are not arrived, who knows whether that will be Liberia. Maybe the area called Liberia that used to call Green Coast will be divided between the French and the British. Yeah,
Let's go to the spread of Islam and Christianity. If you look at the migration, it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Islam probably arrived in the place called Liberia today before Christianity. How did the two spread throughout Liberia, if you have any, and how did the African belief system got displaced or replaced by Islam or Christianity?
Well, yeah, we can say Islam was there. Islam had been in West Africa for a long time. During the time of Ghana, Mali Empire, Songhai, Arab traders from North Africa, had introduced Christianity, during medieval time. So, Islam, sorry, Islam during medieval time. And so Islam had been in West Africa a long time. In Liberia, of course, Muslim traders doing, trading activities. They were able to spread Islam, through either trade or intermarriages, and so Islam had been around Liberia, many years, mainly in the northern part of Liberia, coastal area, Islam did not reach that far, in Liberia, coastal area, the Green Coast, but the northern part, Islam was quick to spread, and Christian missionaries, came and established, their station in different part of Liberia. As I said before, the Methodists, were in Banga and Dimba. You have the Lutheran in among the Loma, and of course, Episcopal people, went to the Bami area and to the Loma area and Cape Mount, but they came, when Islam was already around, and the spread of Islam, among the native people, could be, attributed to, several factors, and maybe one would be through intermarriage. Muslim men, whenever or often marry, non-Muslim woman, they try to convert the woman into becoming a Muslim. All right, and so that would be a way, that Islam spread, and also, our old folks, especially in interior, western and northwestern Liberia, Islam has some things in common with traditional practices, traditional beliefs. In Islam, you are allowed to marry at least 4 women. At least 4 women you are allowed. All right, in Islam. Traditional marriage, you are not limited, but you can marry many women. So, our people were, quick to accept Islam because of that, that their traditional practice of keeping many women will not be abolished. So they embraced Islam. Whereas Christians who came, they were advocating you have to leave all your wives. In my own place where I come from, when the missionary established a Bola home, they make a lot of chiefs to leave their wife, only keep one. But then those chiefs will still bring some young girl in their house and say they are housekeeper. But the housekeeper will not still on the girl pregnant, and they send them back in the village.
Woman business band, very strong. Let's
and then labor, interior population go along with labor. The more people you have in your household, the stronger your labor force, especially if you are a farmer. So chiefs could not afford to have one woman. In fact, traditionally, a man in the village has one woman. Having one wife is a sign of what? Poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means you are poor. That's why you get one woman. All right. So people try by all means to have many women, to have many children, so that they will have respect. And of course, people will often, you will never go to a village where a chief get one woman.
Our time is fast spent, but I want to put in this question from or this observation from Larry Davis, saying that you seem to be suggesting that you prefer Liberia to have been colonized, which he determined to say that's a sad state of mind to think that oh yeah, we should have been colonized and maybe think we have been better for Liberia.
But the thing is, technically speaking, Liberia was colonized. What happened to the ACS? All the people that governed Liberia until 1839 were white people. They were white people the same way the British and the French have colonial administrators. Liberia technically was colonized by ACS. They have white people. They have Americans as what? Agents, of Liberia. So how you call that? Now a colony? That's why how they call it Liberian colony. Liberia was not colonized by Britain or France or European country, but Liberia was colonized.
Okay. Let's talk about migration during this time. I know, first segment, part 1 and part 2, we dealt with the early migration and the waves of migration. During this early republic, did migration continue from outside coming into Liberia?
From where? For what are you talking about?
From North America, from wherever, from the West Indies, wherever. Did people continue to come and settle in Liberia in the form it did prior to the 19th century?
Well, migration continued, from America, from, West Indies or the Caribbean, up to the end of, American Civil War, and after the Civil War, migration stopped, of course, because there was series of things that happened after the American Civil War. Slavery was abolished, in America. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment, gave citizenship, to Black people in America, and then the 15th Amendment allowed them to vote. So all these rights were given to Black people. So Black people did not want to leave. But before then, there were a lot of people coming, to Liberia from the Caribbean. Blading, you know about Edward Wilmot Blading, 1851. He came to Liberia from St. Thomas in the Caribbean on the West Indies, and you can see other people, coming, and all the way up to 1920. You remember, Garvey, Garvey and his UNIA movement wanted to bring a lot of people to Liberia, but only thing he fell off with the Liberian government during Charles D.B. King time, because there had been some, his effort was undermined by U.S. government and the British, who felt that, Garvey activity was undermining their influence in Africa. And so the earlier suggestion to bring people, to Liberia in the 1920s, was aborted, when Charles D.B. King refused him, to bring people here.
Talking about Charles D.B. King, before he became president and lasted for 10 years, and I know he started from 1920 to 1930, so we're just talking about the early years. Before he became president, most of the president, they lasted, their term, 4 years, 2 years, even if they will come back for a second term. But when Charles D.B. King got in power, he lasted 10 years, and that kind of trend continued later on with Tubman, Barclay, and the rest of the people. What changed with C.D.B. King for which the presidential term, changed? Or what changed with Liberia?
Well, actually, it did not change, because the first person that spent 4 years as president was Arthur Barclay, and in 1904 to 1908, and then Charles D.B. King won 2 consecutive times. The election in 1919, 1920, he took over, then he had another election in 1923, and then 1927. So that was 4 years. And his third year, which is 8 years, the third year, the third term, he spent 2 years, then the Fernando Pope crisis came about, he had to resign. So that make it 10 years.
Let's, I know you mentioned briefly about the establishment of the Liberian Frontier Force. What was the purpose and what are some, I know you touched on it, but just tell me again, why was the Frontier Force established and what were some of the activities?
Well, Frontier Force was established because of, the Europeans, especially the British and French, they demand that Liberia had to make its presence felt in area that she claimed, and the Frontier Force will be used to enforce Liberian authority in those areas that she claimed. All right, so the Frontier Force was established, almost the end of Barclay year, 1908, and so it became a very much arms of the Liberian government in terms of enforcing Liberian laws and also enforcing, collection of taxes, but making the Liberian government presence felt in area, because that's why the French and the British, had demanded that if we don't do so, area, where there will be some upheavals and instability, we will rather send our men there, to go and pacify the place, and now we will annex that place to our territory, and that's what that came about.
Okay, we are almost out of time, but that entire early republic, how did it really set the stage to, for what Liberia became, even today?
Set the stage
in terms of the whole political dynamics, our everything, the way we look at governance, the way the country is moving, the direction. What role does that early period play? Because the foundation of everything is very important.
Well, we can say that the early republic, one major thing today that we continue to have is to make the country survive, with all the threats, internal, external, external from the British and the French, internal, continue wrangling with the local people, all these things, but also the system of government that was established, that was now, a country that was established, that did not give equal footing or equal right to all the citizens, even though they consider them to be bad. As I said, after Barclay extended citizenship to Liberians in the interior in 1907, but they were not allowed to vote. So that means they didn't have equal right as a citizen until 1947 when Tubman became president. Okay, so it means that, even though you have Liberia, but Liberia was a country divided. All right, divided. Native people were not allowed citizenship; they were not allowed to vote. And so that means that you build a country on a fragile, status. All right. So the foundation, for unity was not established, and that's why today we continue to find it difficult for Liberia to unite. The history of Liberia was just about the history of settlers. We all went to school to learn about settler history. So none of our people history is found in Liberian history book. So we see each other as strangers, and we're quick to take side against the other people because we are not united. There is no symbol that unites us. There is nothing that we can point out to make us understand that, well, the fellow people we have the sea in common. There are a lot of things Liberians have in common, but those things have not been emphasized. They have not pointed out. They have not been taught in school. So that has become a major problem that continues to haunt Liberia today. That even the Guyo and Mano live in Libera, but they hardly consider themselves to be unified.
So what other major events, that took place during this period that we have not mentioned that you want to just talk about briefly as we draw down the curtains?
Oh, well, there were other things, of course, World War I, affected Liberia, and one with another because through U.S. influence, Liberia had to declare war on Germany. A small country of Liberia, declared. The German people show up, on the Liberian coast, threatening Liberia, and this and that, and so you can, and there were also this, treaty, very treaty that was signed, boundary treaty that was signed, by Liberia and European countries that were not honored, and also, the issue of, finance through, U.S. government impressed on Liberia to take a loan, which of course did not go well, Liberia had to sign a document, 99 years lease where, the finance to, Harvey finance to lease a land, on which, they are getting all the money they spend, or Liberia, got from them, and they continue to get the money over and over, and we can't show anything that Liberia have benefited from. We have been producing rubber for since 1920, almost 1930, and we don't even have a tire factory in Liberia. We don't have anything to show for the rubber we have. Okay, so, and even those that went to school, during the time when fire school were at the peak, they recruited a lot of people in rural areas, forced them to go to fire school to work, and give them, meager pay. All right, so a lot of them abandoned their farming, their rice farming and other things, and eventually, Liberia became a rice importer, because, the able-bodied men were all in fire school working, and people that were nobody to make rice farm, even though, Liberia may not have been, self-sufficient, but at least, the foundation will be established, for people to know how to produce and feed themselves, rather than buying rice from Monrovia and carry to, to Lofa. And so on, those are, all activities and, that really shape, help to shape, Liberia as an independent country, and also, on the international scene. And, all the money Liberia have borrowed, the one that was borrowed by E.J. Roy, did not go down well and led to the resignation of E.J. Roy, so all those things. So those are areas, that maybe, and also, I think I touched on that, the Berlin Conference, how it influenced Liberia territorial expansion. I talk about that. But those are just few things, that maybe, Liberia played a role. World War I, of course, and then, which of course it has some impact on Liberia, that truly U.S. influence.
Okay. And that story on E.J. Raw, we will have time to go into it more when we discuss about the presidents on March 10. But Dr. Ngovo, it's been a pleasure having you. Please summarize for us our discussion for today and your final thoughts before we close down the curtain.
Well, as I said from the beginning, Liberia have been a challenge for the young republic for 1847. The major thing have been survival, for Liberia to survive. From 1847, up to 1900, Liberia always be, struggling, internationally and internally and externally. Liberia have been struggling. All the leaders have had their own challenges. While internal politics, was very much divisive, there were also external threats to Liberia, existed. And but the most important part about it is that with all the challenges outside, external and internal challenges, Liberia, persisted. Liberia existed, and Liberia continued to exist. But those challenges, some of them are still there today. We can see them. But otherwise, like all other countries, around, Liberia have been particularly, troubled by a lot of events, that have shaped its history, and that's why, we continue to have some of the, bad memory about the past, and then we hope, the future will be better for us.
Thank you so much. And next week, our topic will be discussing, still continuing with the history of Liberia, starting from the early 1920s to 1980. And that will be delivered by someone who did not only read about it, but someone who participated in that period, like Dr. Yan Kiawon Tayo. He will be our next guest. Dr. Ngovo, I want to say thank you so much for your knowledge. I know we're going to have you back to discuss post-war Liberia, and I'm looking forward to that.
All right, I look forward to that, and God bless, and thank you so much again for inviting me, and I look forward to another meeting.
And from all of us here at Focus on Liberia, on behalf of my co-host, Daniel Knuckles Kusha, my guest relations manager, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, our guests, our audience. We say thank you so much Until then, my name is Dennis Jar, wishing you a good and godly night.